Hi, everyone. Hope you're having a good day. My name is Mo from ReachUp. We're an organization that is here to help students with their U.S. admissions process. And specifically, we're focusing today on how to write a really good essay to get into the universities of your dreams. I'm leaving my contact details here, which I'll also share later in the presentation, in case you have any questions about the material or how to write good essays after this session. Today, I'm going to kick off with a little intro on what we do at ReachUp and what kind of support we offer students applying to universities in the US. Then we'll talk a little bit about essays, what kinds of essays you should expect to write, what questions are going to be asked, and how to prepare for them. What a good essay structure looks like, and how to deconstruct an essay. And then from there, learning to build up an essay outline for yourself as you're planning your own essays. And then how to go from an outline to a full essay. And then we'll wrap up this session with a few final tips based on my experience working with students. And so we'll go through a few exercises throughout the course of this session. And by the end of it, you should have a good outline for an essay complete. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. ReachUp is a global education platform. It was started by a few alumni from Stanford University. We help students get into their top universities in the US. And the way we do that is through a few services. One is essay reviews, as well as workshops like today's. Two is resume reviews and workshops. And three is we're pretty much a global network of students from university, as well as alumni who you're able to connect with in case you have questions about attending certain universities. So no need to wait. You can join us now by checking out reachup.net. So let's talk a little bit about essays. Why are essays so important as part of the application process? Well, if you look at it from an admissions officer standpoint, they look at thousands and thousands of applications every year. And each application has a ton of information in it. You have the applicant's grades, their standardized test scores, their extracurriculars, maybe some social contributions you've been a part of, work experience, but they really want to, the essay is the one opportunity where they get to hear your voice in your own words. So who is this person that's applying to my university and what matters most to them? And why do they want to join our university? And can they communicate ideas effectively? Those are essentially the three questions that no matter what the essay prompt is asking for, it's really trying to get to this point here, is who you are, what matters to you, why do you want to join our university, and can you communicate ideas effectively? You will see lots of different types of essay questions. There are an infinite number of questions that universities can ask, but I like to think of them as all fitting into one of 5 different buckets. One is the experience bucket, and that's the types of essays that ask you to talk about a challenging experience that you've had in your life or a new experience and what you learned and how you grew from that experience. The other one is the other bucket is the passion experience. So universities will ask you to tell them about a passion or a hobby that you're really into. Could be academic, could be non-academic, whatever it is, and what that says about what matters to you. Third bucket or category is the accomplishment or skill category. And those are the essay questions that ask you to describe an accomplishment or skill that you're proud of. And the effort that was required for you to achieve that accomplishment or attain that skill. The fourth one is an intellectual bucket. So this is where a university will want to learn more about your intellectual curiosity. So they'll ask you to speak to an intellectual experience that you've had and how that's shaped your thinking and how you think today. And the fifth one is what I like to call the open canvas, which means essentially the university is too lazy to come up with a question. So students are free to talk about whatever they want. And even though it's an open canvas, in reality, you'll essentially talk about one of the above 4 categories. Your essay will probably fit into one of those buckets. Now, it's very important to note one thing. In each of these buckets, to write a good essay in any of these categories, you need to be able to describe an experience or a passion or accomplishment or an intellectual perspective well. But equally important is you need to be able to describe the implications of that experience or passion and how it reflects on you. So notice in each of these descriptions, there's always something where you need to tie the essay back to you and how the experience, the accomplishment, the intellectual exercise has shaped you as a person and has shaped the way that you think. Let's spend a few minutes talking about essay structuring. Um, the first and most important thing, and if there's one thing you would take away from this session today, is that the thesis in your essay is the most important part of the essay. And in case you're not familiar with the concept of a thesis, it's a very straightforward concept. It's pretty much the main argument you're making in your essay. Essays for university admissions and essays in general are not meant to just be fact-based. You need to have an opinion. You need to have an angle. You need to be coming into the debate with your perspective. And in this case, the debate is between you and the admissions officer to say, you should admit me into your university. And the admissions officer is saying, why? And so your answer is basically the thesis. And it's the main argument that you're making in your essay. And to go into details, the thesis is typically one clear sentence. It directly answers the essay question, and it serves as the focus of the entire essay. It's the heartbeat of your essay. The rest of the essay has one purpose in life. It's just to support the thesis statement. When we think about structuring of a typical, if you will, 5-paragraph essay, or in this case, an essay for university admissions purposes in the US, I like to think of an introductory section, the supporting section, and the closing section, which all consist of paragraphs. In the introductory paragraph, I typically like to start my essays with just a couple of sentences, 2 to 3 max, introducing the topic of the essay. Could be a short story that's relevant to what you're going to talk about. Could be a statement of belief or a point of view, but it should lead nicely into the main point of your essay, which is then the thesis. And again, it's that one sentence which summarizes the main argument of your entire essay. It's the central theme, and it should be the last sentence of your introductory paragraph. So the introductory paragraph starts with 2 to 3 setup sentences and introductory sentences, and then the paragraph ends with your thesis. You hit the reader with the main point of your essay right then and there. Then you can have a certain number of supporting paragraphs. Could be 2, could be 3, depending on how you want to structure your essay. But each supporting paragraph should have a theme to it. And each of the themes need to link back to supporting the thesis. And the theme of a supporting paragraph is written in the topic sentence, which is the first sentence in a supporting paragraph, which supports your thesis argument, and it also describes the main point of the paragraph. So a supporting paragraph starts with a topic sentence. That topic sentence needs to be supporting your thesis, and also is the main point of the rest of that support paragraph, because the whole purpose of that paragraph is to ultimately support your thesis. And so after the topic sentence, you'll include about 4 to 6 sentences, and these are all estimates, of course, 4 to 6 sentences that support your topic sentence with details, with illustrative examples, with experiences, and reflections on the impact of those experiences. So the topic sentence makes a statement, and the supporting sentences back up that statement. And it's important to make sure you have good illustrative examples, good experiences. You want to go into detail so that readers of your essay can relate to what you're talking about. You can have 2, 3, however many supporting paragraphs you feel you need to support your thesis. But ultimately, you're going to close off your essay with a closing paragraph. And it shouldn't be as long as a supporting paragraph. It could be, it could be 2 sentences, 3 sentences, 4 sentences. But what's important to do is you need to start off the closing paragraph by restating kind of what argument you've been making throughout the essay. And then you close off just by having typically a forward-looking perspective on, where you see the implications of the essay moving forward. So how do you see your life moving forward? How do you see your career moving forward, or the way you're thinking, or whatever it is, but something that's forward-looking. And that's your typical structure for an essay for university admissions purposes. So I'm sharing an example of a really good essay that I've come across, and I call it the suitcase essay. And the question that was asked to the applicant was, what matters most to you and why? So I'd encourage you all to pause the video at this point and spend a couple of minutes just reading through this essay, getting a feel for it. And then afterwards, we're going to break this essay down into the structure that we just talked about. Okay, so going back to the essay that we just reviewed previously, that we just read, let's look at the introductory paragraph. We had a couple of sentences to set up the entire discussion. And here the applicant kicks off the essay saying that he believes himself to be the reincarnation of Ibn Battuta, who's a really famous explorer from the 14th century, who is well known because he traveled thousands and thousands of miles over 30 years and documented all of his travels. He actually wrote a book that he called the Rihla. And what the applicant is saying is, as he continues his journey and his life's journey that's required him to travel across the world, he's also learned lots of invaluable lessons through his travels. And then he hits the reader with the thesis. He says, my suitcase is what matters most to me because it serves as my rihla. It allows me to carry the lessons learned throughout my life travels. And of course, the suitcase here is metaphorical, really implying that the applicant is kind of documents what he's learned, what lessons he's learned throughout his travels around the world. But that's the thesis, and the rest of the essay is gonna talk about how this applicant cherishes travel and what lessons he's learned throughout the travels. Let's go through one body paragraph and break it down. So in the third body paragraph, the applicant kicks off the paragraph with a topic sentence that says, I often joke with friends and family that I never really lived in Saudi Arabia, despite spending my formative years there. So the applicant's going to spend the rest of this paragraph talking about his time in Saudi Arabia and how he actually he actually lived in a bubble within Saudi Arabia because he attended an American school and so was taught, U.S. history, was kind of ingrained into like the American culture and American education. But at the same time, he was surrounded by locals and lived in a country that had a lot of different cultural aspects to it. And so he talks about how this contrast of what he experienced within the bubble and what he experienced outside the bubble in the same country really shaped the way he thinks and really shaped the way he kind of views the world from his own lens. The closing paragraph starts off with a restatement, and this is where the applicant tells the reader, we know a lot about Ibn Battuta, the explorer, and his travels because he documented them through Rihla, but we actually don't know much about what happened to him after he returned home following his 30-year journey. And then he finally closes, the applicant closes off the essay saying, reflecting on his own travels and saying, some experiences are great, some were difficult, but all of them helped to shape who he is today. And he's still excited about continuing to set sail and continuing to travel throughout his life and keeping that metaphorical suitcase in hand and nearby. What I think will be really helpful for each of you now is if you spend a couple of minutes just looking through the list of Common App 2020 questions, which you can find on the next slide in a second. Picking one and spending 15 to 20 minutes writing your one sentence thesis that directly answers that essay prompt. So here's the list of questions from the Common App for the 2020-2021 application cycle. Look through them, pick one. If you want to pick more and spend more time practicing writing a few thesis statements, that's great. But for now, I'd say just pick one and really think about how you would answer, and make sure it's one sentence, clearly answers the question, and really brings out something unique to you. So I would pause here before you'd continue on to the rest of the session in order to do this exercise. Great. So I'm hoping each of you took the opportunity to write a thesis and to reflect on it. And the next step after we have the thesis is we're going to go into writing an outline. And an outline is basically the plan for your essay, what you plan to write about before you actually write it. And it consists of a few different elements. First of all, it starts with the thesis, which you've already written. And again, that's the main point of your essay and the answer to the essay question. But what the outline also includes are the topic sentences, which are essentially the three statements that are going to support your thesis. And they happen to be the theme and first sentence of each of your body paragraphs. So when you have the thesis, you say, okay, I'm making an argument. What are the supporting statements for my arguments? A, B, and C are 1, 2, and 3. Each of those are topic sentences. Those will also be the first sentence of each of your supporting body paragraphs. And they're the theme of each of those body paragraphs. For now, we're not going to talk about writing the introductory paragraph or the closing paragraph. We're just focusing on the thesis and the body paragraphs. And for now, specifically, just the outline. We're just planning our essay. Going back to the suitcase essay, we know that the thesis was that my suitcase is what matters most to me because it serves as my rihla. It allows me to carry the lessons learned throughout my travels. What I write in yellow here is kind of in simple terms what the applicant's actually saying. So the applicant's written that statement. It's a clear statement. It's to the point. And what he's really telling the reader or the admissions officer is that he cares a lot about travel because he's learned so much through travel during his life. And what are the supporting statements for that main argument for his essay? One, he makes the argument that his global travels started out of necessity. He had to leave his home country. And the way he writes that is he says, unlike Ibn Battuta, I did not set sail willingly. That's one supporting argument. The other supporting argument is where, talking about his time living in Canada and the city of Montreal. And he writes, we would end up settling nicely in Montreal, a charming city that mixed its European cultural heritage with its modern North American setting. And really what the applicant's saying is Montreal was the first stop on my life journey. And it's taught me a lot. And if you recall that paragraph, he ends up going into the diversity and the contrast and the experiences of being in a European city, which is actually set in a North American environment. And when I say European city, I mean more from a cultural standpoint. And then finally, the third argument supporting the thesis is when the applicant is talking about his time in Saudi Arabia is, I often joke with friends that I never really lived in Saudi Arabia, despite spending my formative years there. And what he's really saying here is that in Saudi Arabia, I learned many lessons as an expat, living in a bubble within the context of a local culture. There's typically two types of outline. There's a sequential outline and there's a theme-based outline. Sequential outline has more of a time element to it. So the essay would flow more like a story. You state your main argument, your thesis, then your first topic sentence might relate, and your first paragraph would relate to something you experienced as a kid. The second topic sentence and body paragraph would be about, for example, your time in high school. And your third topic sentence and supporting paragraph would be, maybe something around what you want to do in university as a result. So it's kind of walking the reader through a journey of something that you've experienced or developed. Maybe it's a skill. So you might talk about how you picked up the trumpet or the saxophone as a kid, and how in high school you continued that, and how in university you want to continue to play it and eventually become a professional. That's just one example. The theme based outline is kind of more a snapshot in time. So you're in the present and you're focusing on multiple dimensions in the present. So you make your thesis, you make your argument, and then your topic sentences and body paragraphs cover different aspects to support that thesis, not different times, not different phases, but different aspects. So you might say, you know what, my thesis is going to say something about how I want to study biology because it piques my intellectual curiosity more than anything else I've experienced. And so your first topic sentence will share how your academic achievements support that statement. Your second topic sentence and paragraph would speak to your extracurricular activities and how they're linked to your passions in biology. And the third topic sentence would perhaps speak to the experience you've already had through internships or work or otherwise that also support your thesis that you're passionate about biology. So you can see the difference between a sequential outline or a journey outline versus a theme outline. And the reality is that a lot of essays would mix and match these, and that's okay because it's kind of a range. It's not A or B. But as you're thinking about your outline, which obviously then shapes your essay, keep in mind that these are the two general ways to approach how your essay is going to flow. So I invite you all to spend another 15 to 20 minutes on your own. You've already written your thesis, based on the previous exercise. So now I want you to think about what are the 3 topic sentences you want to write to support your thesis. Again, these are statements supporting your thesis, which is the main argument of your essay. And we're not writing paragraphs here, not yet. We're only writing the topic sentence. So after this exercise, you should have 4 sentences written down on paper or a Word document or something. The first one would be your thesis, and then the next 3 are your topic sentences. You could have 4 topic sentences if you want. That's fine, but it's fine to start with 3. And make sure each topic sentence links back to the thesis, and make sure each topic sentence it isn't overlapping with other topic sentences, because otherwise, what's the point of having it? Okay. Now that you've all written your outline, which includes your thesis and topic sentences, let's spend a couple of minutes thinking about how you go from an outline to a full essay. So summarizing the process of going from picking your essay question all the way to finishing your essay, we've already started today with picking a question. After you pick a question, you spend some time to write the thesis. And then once you write the thesis, you create the outline, which includes the topic sentences to support your thesis. Once you're done with that, you've essentially planned your essay, and the rest is execution. You start with writing the body paragraphs, which are the supporting sentences for each of the topic sentences in your outline. And once you're done with those, I would invite you guys to write your opening paragraph. And you already have the last sentence of your opening paragraph because that's the thesis. So really what you're writing here are the 2 to 3 sentences that are the setup for the essay. And once you're done with that, I would encourage you to then write the closing paragraph. I've put estimated a timeline. I put an estimated timeline here, but it really depends. I mean, you can do all this in 3 hours, you can do all this in 3 weeks. It depends how much time you want to allocate to this exercise. But keep in mind that although this looks like a step-by-step process, and generally it is, it doesn't mean that you're not going to step back and step forward and step back again. This is a process of iteration. When you're writing essays, takes time, and it's a process of iteration, which means you might write the thesis and create the outline, then say you don't like your thesis, so you're going to rewrite it, then rework the outline, then start writing the body paragraphs and realize, you know what, you need to rework the outline and the thesis. You might end up picking a different question, and all of that's okay. Just make sure you budget enough time before the application deadline. As you're shifting from having an outline to building a really good essay from that, it's important to keep a few elements in mind. You want to make sure that if you're evaluating your essay, there's 6 different elements that you want to make sure you have checked. One is your writing personable? If I'm reading your essay, can I hear your voice in your essay? That's very important to admissions officers who are reading thousands of essays every year. You want to stand out, and the best way to stand out is to make your voice heard through your words. And the way to do that is to make sure you have opinions in there. It's to make sure to describe emotions that you're having, not just facts, but emotions, perspectives, your opinion, and you. The second element to keep in mind is clarity of thought. Are you clearly delivering a main message in this essay? Are you answering the essay question in a direct manner? Or are you blabbering on about a whole bunch of different topics and not really focused? Third element to keep in mind is structure. Do you have structured writing? Is there a clear thesis? Are there clear topic sentences? Is there an opening and closing to your to this whole conversation? Next element is content. So when you're giving examples, when you're going into detail on experiences and stories, how relevant are those pieces of content? Are you going into the appropriate level of detail and using good examples to prove your points? Or are you staying very high level and therefore not really going into concrete details? Writing flow. How well does your writing feel or flow when someone reads it? Does it read smoothly? Is it easy and pleasurable to read? Now, writing flow is affected by voice, by clarity of thought, by structure, by content. But it's also important here that you avoid trying to be too fancy with your vocabulary and sentence structures. The simpler, the better, because that leads to a more straightforward and easier to read and comprehend essay. It doesn't help you to use really fancy SAT words or very complex sentence structures because that's not enjoyable to read. And then finally, importantly, as a very important element is grammar. How strong is the essay's grammar? Do you make sure you don't have any spelling mistakes? Is the grammar good? Is it strong? This isn't something that's going to impress the universities, but it's definitely something that can hurt your chances if you don't get right. So you're not going to get any bonus points for having good grammar, but you're definitely going to lose points for not having good grammar because that's expected. And that's something that can be corrected through reviews and having someone, have a look through it and give you feedback. So going from outline to good essay, it's important you have all of these elements ultimately in your essay. And this is ultimately going back to the point of trying to help the admissions officer know you better after reading the essay by understanding who you are and what matters to you. Okay, I want to share a few final tips before we end this session. This is based on my extensive experience working with students applying to get into universities in the US and across the world, really. The first one is that if you don't know who you are and what you want to do, then guess. And what I mean by that is many of you will be, 16, 17, 18-year-olds applying to university. You don't necessarily know what you want to do with your lives, and that's okay. But what's not okay is to go into this admissions exercise and having no perspective whatsoever. I'd encourage you guys to, when I say guess, I don't just mean throw something out there and just write about it, but I mean try to think through what your current perspective is on what you think you might want to do with your life, or what you want to major in university, or what you're interested in pursuing otherwise, and write about that. And if what you want to do in your life changes in 3 months and 4 months, that's fine. And universities understand that, and they'll give you the opportunity to explore. But when you're writing your essays, when you're presenting and preparing your application, always make sure to have an opinion and to have an angle when it comes to who you are and what you want to do and what matters to you. uh, Second, don't underestimate your passions and be authentic. Essays, common app essays often encourage you to talk about a broad range of topics, and they don't necessarily have to be academically focused. And if you have a passion that you think is silly, or you think others won't take seriously, don't be afraid to write about that. It's really, you can make a great story out of any experience that you have, so long as you really reflect properly on the implications and the importance of those experiences. So if you're into video games, by all means, feel free to write about it if you're truly passionate about that. But don't just write about how you stay up all night playing them at the expense of your academic experience, but maybe talk about how playing video games allows you to work on your leadership skills because you collaborate with people all over the world. It allows you to meet people from all over the world. Um, it allows you to think in a disciplined manner about how to strategize your approach to winning the games you're playing. That's where you get the points, right? That's where you're authentic and you can talk about your passions and really have that stand out. Storytelling is more about the telling than the story. I can't tell you how many students have come up to me and said, "Hey Mo, like nothing interesting's happened in my life. I haven't gone through a war. I haven't, invented anything. I'm not a famous entrepreneur." Well, that's totally fine. And the thing about, when you're writing your essays and when you're writing your applications, what you're really doing is you're telling the university a story of you and who you are. And for me, storytelling is more about how you tell the story rather than what the story is. I once wrote an essay about eating donuts. You could write an essay about having to, water the plants in your garden every morning, and that may sound boring to you, but if you tell it in a way that's effective and that's metaphorical, it could be really an effective essay that admissions officers would appreciate. So don't feel the need to have gone through something uh, extraordinary to write or to tell an extraordinary story. Focus, 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 and answer the question, please. So many students get nervous and just start to write and blabber on because they want to fill up the word count. But it's really about focusing in your essay. And the structure that I've shared with you during this session really will help you to focus and to make sure you're always, your essay, whether it's the introduction or the middle paragraphs or the closing, or supporting your thesis, and that you have a clear thesis that's answering the question. So make sure you're focusing your essay. And related to that, always keep in mind that more isn't better, rather, better is better. Don't think that a 600-word essay is better than a 530-word essay. So long as you're structured and so long as you're to the point, don't worry so much about quantity. Always think more about quality. Examples help, and so do anecdotes, which are little stories. They help to make sure that you're going from just broad general statements to discussions and descriptions that allow the reader, the admissions officer, to relate to what you're speaking about, to be able to understand the arguments that you're making. So always try to use examples, your own examples. Always try to show small stories within the story, which is your essay. Clear writing always trumps fancy writing. And we alluded to this before when we talked about your writing flow in your essay. Please do not try to use super fancy words. Please do not try to use really complex sentence structures. Be to the point. Use simple, clear writing. Readers of your essay, whether it's for university admissions purposes or life in general, will appreciate that far more. Don't feel the need to brag so much in your essay, because the rest of the application is for that. You're going to submit your grades, you're going to submit your test scores, you're going to share perhaps a resume or a CV. There are lots of opportunities within your application to show off your accomplishments. The essay really is more about your voice, your personality, your character. So yeah, you might be talking about an accomplishment or a skill, but it's not to brag about those accomplishments or skills. It's really more about understanding the journey you went through to get to that point of skill or accomplishment, or some of the challenges that you faced. And so a lot of times students feel like they need to come off as invincible to the admissions officers because they're competing with so many other students. But the reality is that often vulnerability is far more powerful than bragging. Everyone goes through difficult times. Everyone has insecurities, including the students that you're trying to study with at university, and the admissions officers and the professors. They're all humans. We're all humans. So the more you can be vulnerable and open in your essays, the more you can be relatable and authentic. So don't spend your essays. Don't waste your essays trying to brag and pretend like you're perfect. Nobody is. Try to be genuine. Try not to game the system. So a lot of students are keen on attending a certain university or a set of universities, and they know that those universities are well known for maybe their medical program, maybe they're well known for their tech entrepreneurship, whatever it may be. Don't try to position yourself as that type of student necessarily, because a lot of other applicants will try to do that. So first of all, you're not going to come off as unique. Second of all, those universities would have had tons and tons of students in the past trying to game the system, if you will. So they'll be able to spot that pretty quickly. Instead, think more about really what you're trying to do, and keep in mind that a lot of the universities you'll be interested in are typically far more well-rounded than you might initially be aware of. And even if they're great at tech entrepreneurship, they may also have a great history program or a great biology program, and that may suit your needs. And if they don't, you might want to reconsider whether that university is a university you want to be applying to. And finally, last words of wisdom here are: don't panic, be patient, and trust the process. This is an exercise, not the admissions process and the essay writing process is not just an exercise to submit an application because universities are asking you to do so. It's also an exercise in self-reflection. And what is it that really matters to you? Because you might not know the answer to that question when you kick off this exercise. Who are you? Like, what are you trying to get to? And of course, those are questions you'll ask yourself or yourselves throughout the rest of your lives. But during different periods of your life, you always want to stop and check and think, okay, at this point in my life, how do I answer those questions? And when you answer those questions to yourselves, that's really what the essay and the essays and applications should really revolve around. But make sure you're structured in your approach. Make sure you're structured in your essays. Make sure the process is clear in your mind, and trust it. And I promise you'll get to a good place eventually. So that's it for today and for this session. And I just wanted to thank you all for going through this video and attending the session. I'm more than happy to provide more help and support. So I'm leaving my WhatsApp contact detail here, as well as my email. ReachUp also provides services related to essay reviews, resume reviews, and just in general providing support on the application process. So feel free to either email me or WhatsApp me or check us out at reachup.net. And I'm looking forward to hearing about all your successes. So thanks a lot and have a good day.